Victor Hugo said it best. There's one thing stronger than all of the armies of the world, and that is an idea whose time has come. He didn't say a new idea. The oldest idea in the world is nature, is enlightenment. It's freeing our mind from the programming and the scarcity mentality and mindset. The idea is simply permaculture. It's using the principles of nature, and that's what permaculture is. It's simply mimicking what works in a natural system and then designing in what we want, which flowers and birds and butterflies and lightning bugs and insects and all of the different types of food growing on your property. It is the most epic healing environment there is. So I see a world of the Garden of Eden or permaculture landscapes everywhere because it's logical.
Welcome to the Regenerative Real Estate Podcast, a show about human environments and how they can be used as a force for good. Conversations that educate and inspire people looking for a different way to do real estate. I'm Neil Collins, and on this episode we have Jim Gale, a passionate permaculture enthusiast, business builder, and founder of Food Forest Abundance. There's a running joke in my family that comes from my brother-in-law, Tom, who for years has been a permaculture evangelist. Whenever something serious comes up like politics, climate change, or a health ailment, Tom, without fail, will chime in, "Have you ever heard about permaculture?" And I get it. When I first learned about permaculture 15 years ago, I was blown wide open. Here was a way that we could create closed-loop systems where nothing is seen as waste. Energy, water, nutrients, they're all continuously upcycled. It seems so obvious that we could create food forests in abundance where all of humanity could be thriving. I couldn't believe that there was this solution written down in a book that anyone could access that spelled out an approach to food and habitat that the world so sorely needed, but no one was really talking about it. Now, a lot has changed since then, and permaculture has become more and more popular even amongst urban gardeners. But talking with our guest Jim Gale today, I couldn't help but be struck by the same level of enthusiasm for permaculture that first was kindled within me. As you'll hear, Jim has a certain zest for life that has led him into some pretty wild places. And at one point, I'm going to be honest, I was trying to figure out how someone that grew a massive mortgage company and retired on a yacht in the Caribbean was a guest on the show. But as you'll hear, Jim's path became intertwined with the permaculture movement. And while I suspect we may have differing political beliefs, we don't actually differ on our desired outcomes and methods where resilience and abundance comes as a result of embracing community and diversity. Hey everybody, welcome back to another show of the Regenerative Real Estate Podcast. I've got Jim Gale with me today from Food Forest Abundance. But before we get into Food Forest Abundance and permaculture, Jim, we love to start the show off with really what your background is and how you started this journey into this new story that we're all seeking.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Minnesota. They called me Nature Boy growing up. I was always playing with nature, frogs and fishing and chasing turtles. And I, just love everything to do with being outdoors. And, Minnesota, you get cold during the winter. So I would find a way to break the ice and fall through for fun and then get out and do it again. In college, one of the pivotal life-changing moments was when our college wrestling coach had us all write our goals. And I didn't want to write my goals because it had to do with a pen and paper. And I didn't like school much at all, actually. It bored me to tears. And anyway, when I started writing my goals, something happened in my head where I started imagining a wonderful future for myself, achieving the goals that were important to me at that time. And I ended up writing that I wanted to be a 3-time All-American wrestler and a national champion. And when I handed my goals to my coach, he smirked and he said, "These goals are kind of lofty, don't you think?" But 4 years later, I ended up being a 4-time All-American and national champ because I had the vision, thanks to my coach, and thanks to the expression of writing them, which then inspired and energized me. And that's relevant in everything we're doing in our world today. And then I actually, after college, I moved to Hawaii, and I lived there for about 4 years, 4.5 years. I was bartending, and I owned a bar in Hawaii. And that got old. I was 29 and I wanted to do something else with my life. I didn't know what. And I wrote my goals again. I was actually backpacking through Australia and Africa. I lived with the Maasai. I lived in Chiang Mai, Thailand. I lived kind of in Karachi, Pakistan, these off the wall places because I love people and I love culture. So I was experiencing all these cultures and writing my goals. And when I got home, and this was 10 years since the first time I wrote my goals, then all of these doors started opening up to me. And I got into the mortgage and real estate business. And my goal was that I wanted to be retired in 5 years. I actually said 3 years. And you know how goals change after a little bit of time. Anyway, a bunch of events happened in which led me and the company to go from zero out of my mom's basement. I was dead broke to $1.3 billion in gross revenue in, like I said, 3.5 years. It was an incredible run. And then I was kind of sick of that business. The mortgage industry at the time, I could sense that there was a lot going on. I'm sure you saw the show The Big Short.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I watched that like 5 times. It was so right on. And I recognized that the whole mortgage industry had a lot of issues within it. And so I got out of the industry and I bought a boat. I lived on the ocean for a year. And then I found Costa Rica. And I fell in love in every way. In fact, my wife of 15 years, she's here. We've got our kids. We spent 12 years in Costa Rica. And that's where I learned. I had 3 life-changing experiences. 1, I learned what was going on in the world. 2, I had my first 2 daughters. And that completely changed my perspective of life. Instead of just thinking, what am I going to do tomorrow or next year? I started asking the question, what's the world going to be like in 10, 20, 30 years? What's the world of my grandkids going to be like, considering the current trends? And I also learned permaculture. And this is a agricultural design science where we simply take out the poisons and we use natural systems to create edible landscapes everywhere that are no maintenance and provide an abundance of food at an exponential rate forever. And so I saw the problem. I had my motivation, which was my first 2 daughters, and I saw the solution. So in fact, I went through the problem and I spent about 2 years, 12 hours a day, because I was kind of retired at the time. And I spent intense amount of time looking at the problem. And it was stressful because the problems are pretty shitty. I mean, we're going through the 6th mass extinction and all these other things are happening. But when I read Bill Mollison's quote, Bill Mollison is the founder of permaculture. And he said, though the problems of our world are increasingly complex, the solutions remain embarrassingly simple. And I started to sob. And since that day, which is about 14, 15 years ago, I have been asking the question, how do we bring these solutions to the masses at scale? And that has led us to where we are now.
Oh, man. We've got a lot to dig in here because I think that you've hit on some themes, and I want to actually back up and I want to go to that point where you decided my next venture is going to be in mortgage and real estate. What attracted you to that industry?
And let's go into that. If you're talking 3 years, that's a pretty shotgun quick time to get into the industry and create a lot of financial success, is what you're saying.
So my parents had rehabbed a bunch of houses. My dad was a pipe fitter. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, a farm girl. And so she knew how to work, and her and my dad would go to these houses and rehab them, and they'd bring me along as a toddler or whatever age I was. And I always just enjoyed seeing new neighborhoods and running around construction areas. But anyway, that was my first experience with real estate. But then what happened was, after I got home from Africa, a buddy who knew me from college said, come work for my mortgage company. And there was no base pay or no pay at all. It was completely commission based, but something attracted me to that model of commission. And so I said yes. And I showed up and I worked for his company for about 3.5 months. And he couldn't close any deals because he didn't have processors. Processors are incredibly important pieces of the puzzle. So I then moved to another company because I heard that they could close everything. And I learned that the reason they could close everything is because they were printing W-2s on typewriters in the back office. They were doing everything illegal as hell and unethical. So anyway, I recognized that after it took me a little bit of time to get what was going on, I went to another entity, and then they were doing things by the book, but they didn't have a vision that I had. I had goals. And so I started my own company 11 months in. And then it exploded because I didn't know the industry enough to fit into the box, right? I don't believe in the box, explode the box, no confinements. So I asked the question, where can this be better? And here's where I recognized loan officers, just like in the movie The Big Short, they were 28-year-old guys who like to party their ass off on the weekends and were not detail oriented. I recognized that the processors were the key to a successful business. So we started attracting good processors, paying them well, and then they supported the loan officer who was out there getting the deal. Right. So we put that marriage together and it was fantastic. We, like I said, went from 0 or just myself to 480 loan officers in 10 states in 3.5 years.
This is a turn of the show that I wasn't expecting to really want to dig into, but how do you go 11 months into an industry where you don't have a lot of experience to then paying processors and then attracting 480 loan officers in the field? Like what do you have to do from a business standpoint in order to put those pieces together?
That's a great question. It's very relevant to what our new business model is because it's almost the exact same structure. It is to see the structure where you solve the problem. Ask, what is the problem? The answer is never in the statement. It's always in the question, the new answer. Right? So it's in the question, where could this be better? Where could we improve this model? And then when you ask that question kind of obsessively and joyfully, it's good to stay in a positive vibration, then all of a sudden the answers come. And so it's layers. It's very rarely a big answer where everything just changes. It's a series of smaller answers that layer onto each other. And then when you put them together, then you've got the new model.
And so going from a really one industry to another, realizing that like permaculture is where you want to plant your flag. What do you think that initial attraction was or fascination?
The fascination was I love solutions. I love nature. And I really thought I was going to be retired, which is an insanely silly thing. I was ignorant. I was 35 years old and I thought I was cool because I had all this money. And I realized that retirement doesn't even make sense ever. I will never retire because I enjoy the heck out of what I do. When I learned permaculture, it all made sense. When you take the poisons and the poison producers out of the system and supplant those destructive elements in our world with natural systems. Some people call them God's systems or source or nature. The design of nature, the foundation of life that we have here on this planet is absolutely epic. I'll give you one concept. You can count the seeds in a single apple, but you cannot count the apples in a single seed. It's infinite. So when I realized that, and then I started asking the question, why isn't this everywhere? And I started recognizing the why, right? And it is very clear now, the why. Most importantly is the how. How do we get to the next step?
So how do you begin to change a system where we have so little ecological knowledge? We largely, our culture has grown up going to the grocery store.
Yeah.
How do you begin to see this as a problem, and then what's our solutions, and how are we going to bring it out to the world?
So the simple way it's to demonstrate it. And what I'm sharing too is not the hypothetical solution to mass extinction, deforestation, cancer, diabetes, heart disease. It's not the hypothetical solution to world hunger and tyranny. It's the demonstratable solution. And so we are building Freedom Farm Academies, which are these food forest demonstration sites all over the world, Sri Lanka and Lebanon and Ghana and Thailand. And mine here in Orlando is a completely off-grid community on a private lake. It's got a mile-long paved runway on the east coast of the east part of the property. And we are attracting world leaders, especially in the freedom movement, who are coming in and they're blown away because it's so simple. We've got 44 million acres of lawn in the United States alone. The lawn takes more poisons, more chemicals, more human resources than any other crop, and yet it does not provide food. The ornamental landscapes, which include the lawn and the ornamental plants, when we simply trade out 50% of that 44 million acres and put edible landscapes in its place using the permaculture principles, which, by the way, stack. So you've got your roots and tubers underground, you've got your herbaceous layer, your shorter bushes that provide food, your taller bushes, your understory fruit trees and your overstory fruit trees. And then you've got your vines that are running up the fences, turning every fence into a food fence. It creates like the Garden of Eden, like this place of incredible life and abundance and vitality. That's all we have to do is take the ornamentals out and plant food.
It's that simple. So, well, if you're going into a lot of different countries and demonstrating what this looks like, I mean, that's no easy feat. That takes a lot of time, a lot of people, a lot of like building the field. How are you going out and doing this? I mean, what's the secret sauce to making the sausage here?
I love it. The designers in the permaculture world, who are people that have made their lives designing freedom and abundance into our landscapes. The designers are like the processors in the mortgage world. So we mix the processors, we bring the designers in, and then we bring the cooperative partners, people that are the installers and basically the network of collaborators and advocates. When we put those two together, along with the person who has lawn that wants to transform their yard from a biological death zone or dead zone, which is a lawn, into a life-giving system, when we put those elements together, it's magical.
Yeah. A lot of people, they ask me, oh, how do you convince people to embrace regeneration? You know, what does that look like? What's your talking points? And do you find that you're convincing, or are you enrolling, or are you inspiring? Like, where do you really think you start to turn a lot of heads that are saying, I want to do that, even if they have no basis or background in tending to life and cultivating a yard?
Yeah. There's so many things that can come out of that. One awesome question. The first thing that comes to mind is this idea that farming is hard, and farming is hard because farming is unsustainable. What we're talking about is perennial edible landscapes. Now, an annual is a plant that's been hybridized, and you take a tomato out of the ground or off the plant, which is the fruit. You eat the tomato, and if you want to grow more tomatoes, then you take the seed and you plant the seed, and now you have more tomatoes. That's called an annual. Those are plants that you plant once, you harvest, and you have to plant the seeds again. On the other hand, a perennial is like a avocado or a peach or a plum or a pear or an apple In fact, there are over 100,000 different types of edible perennial plants. There are perennials that have been giving food for thousands of years. There's olive trees on the Greek Isle of Crete that have been producing food for over 2,000 years, one tree.
That's incredible. How do you feel the mix of edible perennials mixes in with the need for more native, more drought tolerant landscaping? There's so many different options, and that's where I see a lot of people get almost overwhelmed pretty quickly.
Yeah, and that's the function of permaculture design. The people who, for a living, make it their profession to know what plants go in what locations, what guilds will thrive in what agricultural hardiness zones. So everybody lives in a particular zone. I'm in 9B, my buddies up in the Carolinas are in 7A, and then you look at what plants grow. Then you look at all of the factors, how much sun is on the property. Do you already have a bunch of oak trees or overstory trees that take all the shade? So to know which plants they are and to know the design elements that go in is the most important first step is the design process.
How much does a typical design like that cost? Is cost a barrier that you see for people wanting to adopt or transform their landscape?
Yes, cost is a barrier. It's typically about $1,100, $1,200 for a standard backyard quarter acre or less lot. Then for an acre, it's just under $2,000. And this is an incredibly detailed design. And the reason it's a barrier is because people don't understand the value of it. It's like building a house. Even if you are a very skilled builder, the first thing you do is you start with a design and the architectural blueprint. A lot of people, they say, I'm going to start growing food. So they go to Home Depot or Lowe's, they buy a bunch of bags of dirt, they buy a bunch of fruit trees, they put them in the ground, and now they're growing food. And most of the time, it's going to work. But when you layer in the different types of soil and mulch, and especially the beneficial plants like the nitrogen fixers, you want to build the nitrogen in your soil and all of the different other nutrients. Guilds. A guild is a community of plants that support each other. So you want to put guilds in so all of the different needs of the plant are met.
So I want to continue down this barrier because this is what we see a lot, is that people are really interested in transforming their landscape, and they want to increase their resilience, and they want to grow their own food. They have no knowledge set to go do that. And then whenever they come up with the materials that they're going to need to create the beds or create the design and buy the plants and all that, they're looking at a pretty big bill. And I'm wondering if you see, like, if you're just catering towards the people that are like, I want to do this, I have the means to do this, and we're going to move forward. Or where do you see that as a roadblock?
Yeah, well, so our primary mission in this is to inspire and empower people to grow food. So yes, here's the fun part. If somebody out there listening has $20 and they need to spend that $20 on food for themselves or their family, they can go to the store. They can buy food with seeds. They can buy fruits and veggies that have seeds in them. They can go online on YouTube and they type, how do I propagate tomatoes indoors in Minnesota in January? And guess what? There's going to be a video for that. How do I grow potatoes? By the way, potatoes, sweet potatoes, fantastic. And you can grow these indoors or outdoors. And so you can literally take $20 and no extra money out of pocket, and you can start your own garden.
This is the funny part, is that people have come to us saying, look, only the privileged have the opportunity to create a garden. And I've spent a lot of time in different cultures around the world as well, and it's typically the exact opposite. Yes. Of like, the people that are growing the food are the ones that need to grow the food. And it's one of those things where you see where the culture is going. And you had mentioned the freedom movement. It's something that I don't know too much about, but I can make an extrapolation into what that means. But it's interesting to see how something as simple as growing your own food is an act of rebellion as well as self-reliance.
Absolutely, it is. It's peaceful sedition. It is the ultimate act of revolution where we don't have to fight anybody. And by the way, the value of eating food that's grown without poisons is epic. The amount of nutrients in an apple or a tomato that is grown without poisons. First of all, it's not poisonous. Second of all, when you build healthy soil with all the life in the soil, then the apple or whatever fruit or veggie it is going to be way more nutrient dense. So then what are your odds of you or your family having heart disease or diabetes or cancer? The odds go way down. Hippocrates was a smart fella. He said, let thy food be thy medicine, let thy medicine be thy food. And Thomas Jefferson said a similar thing. Let the doctor of the future prescribe no medication, but interest his patient in the care of the human frame and proper nutrition. Right? It's about what we eat is one of the primary things that either enliven us or take away our energy.
Gosh, I love that. You had mentioned Bill Mollison. So Bill Mollison, David Holmgren, they published Permaculture 1 back, in like 1978?
Yeah.
So we're talking 30, 40 years for people to even hear about permaculture. I remember talking about permaculture in 2011, and people had no idea what that is.
Yeah.
Where do you see the evolution of this concept? And if you had a crystal ball, where do you think that we're going from here?
We have two potentialities, right? And it's because of the nature of what's going on right now. We'll just stick to the positive one. The negative one's really negative, but the positive one is Victor Hugo said it best. There's one thing stronger than all of the armies of the world, and that is an idea whose time has come. He didn't say a new idea. The oldest idea in the world is nature, is enlightenment. It's freeing our mind from the programming and the scarcity mentality and mindset. The idea is simply permaculture. It's using the principles of nature. And that's what permaculture is. Permaculture is simply, as you know, it's simply mimicking what works in a natural system and then designing in what we want, which flowers and birds and butterflies and lightning bugs and insects and all of the different types of food growing on your property. It is the most epic healing environment there is. So I see a world of the Garden of Eden or permaculture landscapes everywhere because it's logical.
And how do we get there? I mean, I know that you're working on this with your company, Food Force Abundance. What do you think are those big dominoes that we really need to start knocking down in order to create systemic change?
Yeah. So it's, Tesla said, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And they either changed a word on him or he missed a word. Don't think. It's not about thinking. It's about going in, understanding and experiencing. It's about feeling the vibration, feeling the energy of life. So what we're experiencing is an exponential growth in all of these freedom mindset ideals, which permaculture and freedom are synonymous. We cannot, a permanent culture implies that we're free to create abundance as opposed to this current system of scarcity. So I see the energetic shift being the first thing. So then how do we create awareness? The next logical question, how do we do it? Well, we've got a TV show called The Land of Plenty that will be seen by millions and billions of people. We've got a global simultaneous action alliance, which is thousands of freedom lovers and truth tellers and people who just want to see a better, healthier world are coming together to create a media system that will supplant and have infinitely more energy than the current mass media, which is controlled by the same entities. So we're putting in all of these different elements, including Galt's Landing, where I'm building this completely off-grid community that produces all of the food, water, and energy needs on site. And then we're building a Freedom Farm Academy demonstration site there. That's what's scaling around the world, is all these demonstration sites. And it's like the anti-cancer, because a food forest by its very nature is expansive. If you leave a food forest that's well designed and planted for 30 years, you come back and it won't just be where it was and bigger, but it'll actually be expanded hundreds of miles. How is that possible? Well, when a bird eats a blueberry or a raspberry and it flies 10 miles away or 2 miles away and it defecates, now you might have a new blueberry or raspberry tree. It's epic.
I think I found the thread that I was really looking for this time is, and I want to connect it back to your story because I have a really parallel experience of, I was working overseas and we saw real estate as a way in which we could have an unlimited earning potential. And I see that so often with other real estate professionals, that they are attracted to the industry for this financial freedom piece.
Yes.
And it sounds like you had that same thing whenever you got into the real estate and mortgage industry of how do I have financial freedom? But then you have a 1.5 million realtors out there, lots of kind of new investors, even if they're seasoned, that are in an industry that is not promoting and enabling freedom and financial freedom of other people. In fact, it's about preserving and codifying what is and the powers that be. And this is going out on a branch of,
I love
how do we take that sentiment of we want to free ourselves, we want to experience what that's like, but use an industry and transform it for that purpose, for good.
I love it. Yes. That is such a profound question. You're talking about an industry-wide transformation. And when you show the value of it, so at Galt's Landing, we have multiple people per week saying, do you have any lots left for sale? And the answer is no. We sold out right away. And we sold out at a very good price point. And why did we sell out? Because we started with a design and an intention and a concept where we can live at Galt's Landing. The whole world can shut down. We will have complete freedom. We will have all the food, water, and energy needs met on site, and we have community around us. Community is actually one thing that's incredibly important these days, is to build community. If we were the only ones growing food in a food supply chain collapse, which is happening, that would not be food security. So food security is when all of our neighbors have enough food to thrive as well as us. So now you've got a real estate opportunity as a developer, and developers are coming to us left and right, where you design freedom into the landscape. Now you don't have to have fiat money to thrive. You could literally not have a job. We don't pay taxes. We don't ask for government for permission for anything. We are completely free. And we are demonstrating how to do that on every level. If the system shuts down, that's freedom.
And this is where there's a fork in the road that I see from other kind of living off-grid communities that are out there, or not communities, but groups, self-interest groups that are, it's almost like they're anti-community. It's like, give me my 5 acres. I don't want to see my neighbor. I don't want to know that I have neighbors. And so I just need to be left alone. But it sounds like you're kind of going and bending the arc into another direction, saying that there is an interdependence and there's something to community.
And there's so much value in community. I love people. People are the spice of life, all the diversity and wonderfulness of the different skills. And then it's also really important to have somebody who knows how to do different things, right? In the situation that is already here and fast approaching at the same time, it's really important to know who in your neighborhood will stand next to you in case there's some type of criminal activity going around. Who in your neighborhood can help you grow food? Who in your neighborhood might be able to fix some appliance in your house? It isn't me. I don't know how to do that. It's somebody else. Right. So when we can bring those communities together like they used to do when we had a completely decentralized system, in a centralized system, wicked, psychopaths, evil, whatever you call it, always wants to control the mind and the energy of more people. That's what evil psychopaths do. So the solution is very simple. get with your community and figure out ways to each entity or each family might contribute a particular thing to the community. And then you start bonding, and it's a beautiful process.
Oh man, yeah, I love it. I mean, this is really what I think separates out sustainability of people saying, we need more sustainability, and we need solar panels, and we need electric vehicles, and we need heat pumps. Like, yeah, a lot of that is really necessary and cool and like great technologies. But you can't replicate community through technology and buying just more buying stuff.
Right.
And that's really the heart of our mission. Is like, there's $11.4 trillion of residential mortgage debt out there that is really making people either pay more than 30% of their income to their landlords, or they're trying to put the roof over their head and the food on the table for their single family house.
Yeah.
And it's stressing them out. And we're having an epidemic of health problems, and stress is through the roof. So it really does seem like we are we're going down this path and missing literally the ground beneath our feet and the potential that lies there that we've largely paved over.
Yes. Freedom is in the soil. It's in the landscape. Well, it starts in our hearts and minds, right? The mindset of faith and courage. And I don't say this lightly, and I don't say this, I'm a very spiritual person, not so religious, but there's an energetic signature to faith or to be inspired. Like, how do you feel when you feel inspired? How do you feel when you feel courageous? When you take a deep breath and ask yourself that question, it changes the energy within you. And then from that energy, as opposed to the scarcity fear energy, from that energy, you look around and you see and you notice different things. The mind, and this is also very medical and scientific, a mind that's in stress, anxiety, fear does not function at its highest capacity. So then the logical step is, how do I first get centered, knowing that I'm more than this temporary situation? And then from there, we operate out of this energy of abundance instead of scarcity. And that's critically important for our own health. So anyway, just a little side note, but I wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, I think you hit on a really key chord of safety and how can people feel safe in order to create, to explore, and to actually want to put their hands in the soil rather than, oh my God, I've got to go just grind.
Right. And look at that. So for some people, it's about, is it worth my time? Well, when you get into going out into your food forest and observing and interacting with these natural systems, and all of a sudden a butterfly flies by, you hear a bird or you see a bird that you haven't seen before, it's energizing. There's something beautiful to it. So in other words, the act of being outside and observing, interacting with your garden or your food forest is actually life and time giving. It is not a time expense. And the values just on a fiat basis that you're going to get from planting a fruit tree, this is just an amazing fact. When you put let's say an apple tree in the ground and you've got, good soil, you do it right. Let's say it costs $250. Within 1 year, that apple tree is going to be 2 or 3 times, maybe even 7 or 8 times the volume in 1 year. So now if you bought that same apple tree at the nursery, but it was in a 30-gallon pot instead of a 10-gallon pot, it would cost 2 times or more as much money. Now it starts to produce apples. Now, how much are those? How much is an organic vine-ripened apple worth, or tree-ripened? It's worth a lot to your health and to your wellness, and in terms of fiat. So there's really no logical reason not to grow food instead of ornamentals. It's just a programmed bunch of BS, which are the 3 forms of BS: bad science, belief systems, and bullshit.
Tim, let me ask you a question. Why do you say fiat instead of money? I'm guessing that there's a reason behind this.
Yeah. So in 1971, Nixon took us off the gold standard, turned our money into something that is, in 100% of the cases in global history, fiat, which is not backed by gold or silver or any tangible thing, has failed. It's 100%. And it's designed to fail because every time a fiat fails, then the centralized systems, the power systems, provide the solution, which always comes with more control. The central bank digital currencies are one of these solutions they've been planned out for decades. So to realize and understand all these truths and then to act with that new awareness, and fiat is going down, my friends. It already is. I mean, what are the cost of eggs? What's the cost of gas? What's the cost of just about anything in the last 3 years? The cost has went up, but yet it's still the same egg, right? So, and that's going to continue, and it looks like it's going to accelerate.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you for taking that offshoot there. Tell me where people can get more information, how they can get involved. What is the path that you're really hoping to inspire people to go down?
Cool. If you'd like to grow food, whether you have $20 or $2 billion, if you'd like to grow food, then we have a group of permaculture designers that are standing by to chat with you. And it's a free conversation. We'll do 30 minutes. There's no charge or anything. We will answer any question you have about whatever you want to talk about regard to growing food and freedom and abundance and solutions. And for people who want to speed up time and design their landscapes to grow food, then one of those designers can help you with that process. For people who want to be advocates or to be in the business of helping your community grow food, maybe you're a developer or you're into real estate and you want to get into this strategy to help create abundance for the world, then get a hold of us. You can still talk to a designer and then they'll direct you in the best way to help collaborate. And the Mac Daddy of them all is if you want to live completely off grid and you want to become a Freedom Farm Academy demonstration site, which also becomes a nursery and part of the supply chain. That's what we're doing at Galt's Landing. And we've had 300 people visit in the last month, and we're not even open yet. I mean, it's an incredible business model. To be part of the food supply chain during a food supply chain collapse is a no-brainer. So if you want to get involved in any way, get a hold of us at foodforestabundance.com.
Oh, Jim, well, this was a really fun conversation. I'm glad you didn't retire. I think that your brain, I'm fascinated with how your brain works, especially as it seems to be going a million miles an hour. and just like you're so clearly passionate about this. And I'm really excited to see the impact that you're going to be making in the world.
Awesome, my friend. Well, thank you so much, Neil, for everything you do. And regeneration is the key. Cyclical regeneration. It's just how it works. So thank you for doing everything you're doing.
If you want to follow our work at Latitude, you can follow us on Instagram at latitude.regenerative.re, and mine is at I am Neil Collins. We inherently believe in the potential that comes from connecting value-aligned and purpose-driven people together in community. That's why I encourage you to join our mighty network and introduce yourself to the other people working across the globe to advance a more regenerative, resilient, and beautiful world. Here, we want to know what you're working on and what inspires you. Through this platform, you can attend live events, take courses provided by our podcast guests, and create connection with other people and businesses that share your same passion. To join, find the link in our show notes or visit our website at chooselatitude.com. If you'd like to support the show, please share it with your friends and be sure to follow us on your podcast app so that you always have the latest episode downloaded. Another way to support our regenerative field building is to leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Positive ratings help attract amazing guests, and they can be the deciding factor for someone else to tune in and listen. And who knows? Maybe this is the kind of motivation that it takes for them to finally decide to align their profession with their sustainable and regenerative values and become a positive force for good within their own community. This show was produced by myself and edited by Anthony Wallace
and offered as a part of our work with Latitude Regenerative Real Estate.